Nights, the Woodstock Festival reached a tired but heady climax on Monday morning as Jimi Hendrix led out his colourful crew. For the official photographer, Henry Diltz, who had been on site ever since they started building the stage, it was that marvellous moment he'll never forget.
Best of all, and most memorable of all, was Jimi Hendrix. Because he came on at the very last morning, just as the sky started to get gray, and it was kind of a misty morning. It was a magical time, and everybody was so mellowed out by then. And then this guy kind of came on very kind of quietly and just played this magical music that just moved you so much. And then when he finished with the Star-Spangled Banner, which I had never heard him play before, I don't know if he'd ever played it before, but it was just incredible to hear this song with all the sound effects of of explosions and jet fighters roaring over and all this stuff. You just stood there with your mouth open. I get emotional thinking about it. I really do. It was just a wonderful moment.
Star-Spangled Banner from Jimi Hendrix. Many fans had already left the site long before Hendrix brought the proceedings to a dramatic conclusion on that hazy August morning. And for them came the perplexing task of locating their vehicles, and in some cases, themselves, and attempting to leave the area. Chipmunk.
It must have been horrific. In other words, on all these little winding, delightful country roads, the first thing that was occupied were the drainage ditches with cars. That was the first parking space. The second parking space was probably the curb lane. The third parking space was generally the center of the road. So here you were, approximately 5 cars wide, and that was probably one of only 4 of the access or egress routes for motor vehicles in the place. So to get the right people, the people who had arrived last, to get them into their appropriate cars and have them back up, turn around, and face the other way somewhere towards the city from which they came, and then get the rest of these people to back up in unison, must have been a terror.
Of course, Chip himself was one of the privileged few able to leave the site by helicopter, while down below, Police Sergeant Walter Ramsey was still trying to unravel the worst nightmare that had ever descended on his town.
The streets were lined with kids walking and hitchhiking. I generally don't pick up hitchhikers. That day, I did make an exception. It was just, as I say, a different situation. I picked up 2 kids from Long Island, and I was in full dress uniform going back to work. And here was a couple of kids about 17 years old. And in them days, there was a lot of animosity between the kids and the cops. And when they got in the car, they looked at me, and there was a little shocked look on their face. Oh, we're in a police car now, and we're in trouble. And we got talking, and then I let them realize, where I was coming from. And we had a little conversation. That was the last I saw them. And some months later, I received a card in the mail from them, thanking me for the interaction we had, and it was cute. It was a card that had doves on it, and peace and love and joy, which was the theme song of those days. But it meant something to me because I could see the communication that was established with these young people, and they indicated that they realized then all of a sudden that don't stereotype all cops as being bad, and don't stereotype all kids as being bad, and that we can't talk. And from that day on, I had a different viewpoint towards young people.
Meanwhile, the organizers had several more headaches to contend with, not least of all restoring the site to prime arable land. Chipmunk again.
I used mining cable, which was a steel-clad cable, to take the power out underground some 2 feet underneath the audience to the follow spot towers. Had I not done that, probably the whole downstage area would have been electrocuted. Everything was torn up. It was amazing. There were sleeping bags and tents and clothing and personal articles that were jammed into